Thank you all for coming out this morning. I'm Tracy Sternberg, Director of Programs and Sponsorship with NC Tech, or the North Carolina Technology Association. We're very excited about the opportunity to host this virtual workshop this morning and really look forward to learning more about low-code technology. We're excited to have partnered with OutSystems and Cloud Development Resources, and I think it's going to be a really great virtual workshop this morning. Most of you are familiar with us, but in a nutshell, NC Tech is a membership-driven nonprofit that serves as a primary voice of North Carolina's tech sector. We fuel North Carolina's growth through 4 areas of focus: sector promotions, professional networks, government affairs, and talent development. If you'd like to learn more about NC Tech, we'd love to share some more information with you, and we'll get in touch with you after this session. I do want to again thank Cloud Development Resources and OutSystems for working with us, and I think they've got a really exciting lineup for this morning, so I know you'll enjoy that. But I also want to thank them for their donation. Because we had to move this to a virtual offering, they were very gracious in offering to make a donation on behalf of every attendee to our local food bank, the Food Bank of Central and Eastern North Carolina, and we really appreciate you all doing that. So we're going to run a quick video on the food bank real quickly, and then turn it over to Clark Swain, who's the CEO of Cloud Development Resources, to kick off the workshop. So thanks so much and enjoy.
Open. In terms of children, obviously they're out of school, and we do have a lot of schools who are continuing those programs, but we are looking for ways to partner with them and help those families out who are in need.
Funds help more than anything. It's what I always tell my friends and family, is that we can buy more food than you can, and we can buy it faster than you can, especially right now. We've seen great support from our companies, our business partnerships, and people still want to come in and volunteer.
Right now, I can't focus on my business, but let me focus on my community, because let's face it, we're North Carolinians. We're all in this together.
We know that.
Great. Good morning, everyone. My name is Clark Swain, and I'm the CEO of Cloud Development Resources. And thank you, Tracy, for that kind introduction. What we've got for you this morning is a brief introduction of Cloud, of OutSystems, and low-code, which is presumably why y'all are here. And then we're going to turn it over to Bruce Buttles from Humana, who's the Digital Channels Director there, who's going to talk about their journey with low-code and the OutSystems platform over the last year and a half, and how they've begun to radically transform their innovation process and getting apps out to both internal business users as well as customers in record time. Just a wee bit about Cloud. Cloud Development Resources is a web and mobile app development organization with offices here in Asia and across the US. We are an elite partner of OutSystems. OutSystems, who you'll hear about here in a second when Bart Finelli gets on, is the premier low-code provider or platform provider in the world. Normally in these things, I ask sort of, does anybody understand, has anybody heard of low-code before? It's kind of hard to do that in a virtual setting. But just briefly, low-code is a development approach, software development approach that enables you to deliver applications faster with minimal hand coding. It's basically a visual modeling through a graphical user interface to assemble and configure applications so that developers can skip all the nitty-gritty of infrastructure and re-implementation of patterns and really focus on the 10% of an application that drives business value. As I said, Bruce is going to talk about the Humana journey. And then after that, Matt Hartley, who is our head of delivery, is going to do a very quick demo of a low-code app being built in 15 minutes. and then we'll wrap up with a quick roundtable where Christian Woodward, who is the VP for the Americas for OutSystems, Bruce, and Justin James, who is an OutSystems MVP, will be taking questions on the challenges and experiences, best practices that they've had. Two other quick things before I pass over to Bart. This presentation is being recorded, and the deck that's being shared will also be available for all of you. And when you get it, if you open it and you click on the food bank logo down in the left-hand corner of all the slides, that will get you directly to the donation page for the Food Bank of Central and Eastern North Carolina. And if I might add one other thing, one of the reasons that we're so keen on supporting local food banks obviously is driven by the COVID-19 pandemic. But one of the key things is it's not just money, it's about volunteering time. So as you, if you listen to the whole video that will come in the deck, they need time as much as from folks as much as they need money. So if you have some free time on your hand, please consider helping those guys out. It'll help your local your neighbors. In any event, I'll hand over to Bart, so Bart can give us the introduction to OutSystems and the revolution that they are leading in the low-code world.
Thank you very much, Clark, and good morning, everybody. I'm Bart Finelli. I've been, just to give you a little background, been with OutSystems about a year and a half on an amazing journey to change the way we and our customers deliver outcomes to their customers and their clients in a new way to many. However, what I'll say from the onset is, as a company and as a method of developing and delivering outcomes, we've been around for 15 plus years, and we're now seeing a significant upswing in attention, adoption, and then awareness from the analysts that are out there who have us as a leader in the Magic Quadrant for Gartner, as well as the Forrester Wave. So I'm just going to share two slides. We'll do a one click now, and to give you just a view that we're known, we're used, and we've been very successful in our markets, and we're probably the most successful unknown company to you that you've heard of, or not heard of for that matter. However, I think that will change today, especially with the story that you hear from Bruce. And I'll give you just a high level on low code, probably 5 to 8 minutes in this beautiful visual. Although I'm not going to speak directly to the visual, I wanted to share a visual that provided the audience some context on where low code, or OutSystems for that matter, would fit in what we'll call software development, or in application development, or the life cycle of tools and or ways to do it that are out there. And I'll speak to it in a different form, but try to get you to think a little bit outside the box. So in general, when many folks think of low code or something of the like, regardless of whom provides the technology, they might think of it in the form of a tool within their arsenal. However, OutSystems specifically is not a tool. It is an enabler for business outcomes. We're a platform that it will augment the way you do your job, or your teams do their jobs, or your customers consume the output of your developers. And it's a full stack, full life cycle, allows you to deliver outcomes in what I'll say days in some cases, weeks in many, but by far an order of magnitude faster and more predictable than any other way to do it. So high code, or using SaaS out of the box per se. It's very differentiated compared to anything you'll be familiar with if you haven't experienced it in the past. the reason this is so important, especially right now, is, as we know, change comes upon us unannounced. And even without change, if all things were consistent, what we find with our prospects and our customers is they still, in areas of their business, underdeliver, technically due to backlogs or legacy systems, or even a variant of SaaS platforms that they're using, and they struggle to keep up in normal times. Well, with OutSystems, even in times of change, we were able to deliver outcomes in a more predictable way. We're able to draw down backlogs very quickly, and we provide a seamless experience for end users, whether they're internal or external to your business. You'll hear quite a bit of, I think it will be a revelation from what you hear from Bruce. He's done amazing work at Humana, and he's going to share some of his stories. There's a few ways to think about what I'll call legacy or high code, hand coding, and the unfortunate nature of its complexity and the fact that it slows us down. If we just focused on or just thought about critical path initiatives that we have, even separating those from the entire backlog, it's very difficult to keep up with those in a high code environment. However, low coding, it puts all of that into a manageable perspective, allowing you to achieve innovations and productivity it's just well beyond what the traditional approach provides. And you'll have to almost frame it in your mind as a possibility and have a possibilities mindset when you think of low code compared to the way you're doing it today. And almost create what I'll call what if moments in your mind as you're listening to Bruce. It's what if you had no backlog, or what if you had a very minimal but manageable backlog? It would likely change the dynamics of your teams and the way you're running your business. Or if you looked forward over the course of a year, what if you could deliver 3 to 4 times more outcomes for the business with the same exact staff that you have today? And that experience or those outcomes that you delivered were bulletproof. They were a perfect UX UI. They provided an experience for your customers, internally or externally, that was second to none. Think about how that might change your day-to-day and your team's day-to-day. It changes. It's a different way to think about running an IT business, or in a business within a business, and delivering a service to either internal customers or external customers. And our idea of low code as a horizontal platform, I'll leave a term with you that we use internally at OutSystems. We're actually the anti-SaaS. So prospects and customers often go to SaaS as a way to speed up their high coding, because SaaS provides out-of-the-box capabilities to some degree that you then customize to some degree for your business and your business purposes. However, everyone gets the same SaaS. So if we're thinking about SaaS as an augment to high coding to deliver abilities within your business, what happens is we see prospects and customers delivering the same abilities as everyone else, meaning there's no competitive differentiation. So for us, being a horizontal platform, I like to think of us as the anti-SaaS, because we provide the speed, we provide the ability to deliver a perfect experience that's predictable, and we provide on top of that complete competitive differentiation to high code or SaaS, because we're fit for purpose. you use a low-code platform to deliver exactly what you need internally or externally, faster than you can with high code, as well as more competitively differentiated than SaaS. So in closing and prior to handing it over to Bruce, what you'll hear is how I think a very traditional and legacy approach was overcome with a technology that was new, and it required a shift in mindset. However, the outcomes and the proof are undeniable that low code is here to stay. And I would suggest it's the next wave of SaaS, which has been the last 10 years, and will be the anti-SaaS from here on out. So with that, I'll share the screen and the rest of the time with Bruce, and I'll thank you all graciously for being here and allowing us the time to participate in your community. So Bruce, off to you.
Great, thanks, Bart. I appreciate it. Hey, folks, welcome. And it's funny, COVID, right? So COVID struck my network this morning, so I'll just ask you all to bear with me as I'm kind of flying blind, literally. I would typically be on video so I could see you face to face, but it's great to meet you all virtually and to have you here. So, yeah, the first thing I thought I would just share is just a little bit about our low-code journey that we've had at Humana. But on slide 2, just a little bit about me. So how did I come to, what was my journey coming to low-code? For the first 10 years of my career, I really spent in flight simulation, building simulators, the F-16 and the C-130 for the Air Force, for airline businesses, etc., at a major simulator manufacturer down in Tampa, Florida. Then for about the last 15 years prior or after that in financial services at TIA, some startups, some healthcare finance startups. And really the last 2 years I've been at Humana, dedicated to the healthcare industry. But it was about almost 6 years ago, it's heading towards 6 years ago, that I started working with low-code and discovered OutSystems. I did a bake-off where, frankly, it was hard to pick. You know, many of the platform vendors that do low-code on paper, they all look pretty good. But when I really put the top-tier vendors to the test, OutSystems came out on top. That was my experience, is that, you know, I couldn't break OutSystems. that was kind of how I ended up with OutSystems about a little over 5 years ago now. So that's just a little bit about me on slide 2. So, okay, quick quiz. On slide 3, hopefully you see a very familiar superhero. All right, maybe you can put it in the chat, whatever, folks can see it. You know who the superhero is, right? It's Spider-Man, well, better known as Peter Parker. All right, so why in the world am I talking about Spider-Man? Well, if you go to the next slide, slide 4, there should be a nice older gentleman there, and I wonder if anybody could remember who is that older gentleman. Well, kind of near and dear to my heart, he's got the same name as my oldest son, Ben. So that's Uncle Ben. Well, next quiz for you. What was the famous, think in your mind, what was the famous phrase that Uncle Ben had? That when he talked to Peter Parker, he said, hey, with great power comes great responsibility. So you see on the next slide, on slide 5, you know, it's so true, and I think that's the theme that I want you guys to kind of soak on for a second. So, like Bart said, what if we had great power? It would come with great responsibility. So, how is low-code going to give us great power? Well, slide 6, you'll see where I kind of hint to this fact of what if you had the power to innovate faster? What if it was 2 times faster, 4 times faster, even 10 times faster? You know, and what we found at Humana is that on average, we're seeing about 4 times more time to market, more quality, more value to the customer across our projects that are powered by OutSystems. So if you had that type of power to innovate that much faster, you know, then who's the superhero? It'd be you. So hopefully you see on slide 7, our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man once again is you. if you have that type of power and that type of ability to innovate so quickly. So what I thought I'd share now, so on slide 8, is just a few ideas of how I went about 2 years ago introducing low-code to Humana, because it was a new idea, a new concept. So hopefully these next few slides will give you a good idea of some of the message, some of the concepts that have helped me to tell the story and really get people excited about what's possible. So the first thing is, what is low-code? Well, if you go to slide 9, I use this analogy where on the left-hand side, you've got the Ford plant. So today you have the Ford, back in the day, I think it was 1917 when Henry Ford first opened up the Ford plant. And I kind of akin the left-hand side to, that's like hand coding, where, hey, in its day, it was innovative. You had a group of folks, you had parts coming down the assembly line, and they were able to produce the Model T at a price that everyone could afford. It was revolutionary for its day. But on the right-hand side, if you look at the Ford plant today, it's all automated. Well, that's low code. So I like to say that, basically robots, if you will, are generating the code at our direction, just like the robots on the right are generating the code out of OutSystems. So the next slide, slide 10, we shouldn't be too surprised that robots, if you will, are automating a lot of our tasks around the company. We think about the call center. We have the IVR that's automating the response to phone calls, etc. Heck, we even got vacuum cleaners running around our house that are automating the process of just keeping our floors clean. We've got smart homes that turn on the lights and control the temperature. As I like to say, robots are our friend, right? But I thought it was kind of interesting where, as technologists, why is it that we as technologists and innovators are all about automating kind of other people's jobs, but when it comes to automating our jobs as technologists, as developers, sometimes we may not be quite so good with that. So don't be surprised if you feel that a little bit. So let me just check in and make sure that we're tracking on the slides here. The next slide is going to be slide 11 of why low code. Are you guys tracking with me?
You got it, Bruce.
Great, thank you. Okay, so the next section. So why low code? So things are okay, right? We're innovating. We seem to be okay, but why? Why low code? Well, next slide, slide 12. Hank Aaron. So I use this analogy to say, okay, well, why am I talking about Hank Aaron? Well, how did he get so good? Well, Hank got good because he practiced more than anybody else in his day. 3,700 hits a year, 2,100 runs. You start to look at these stats. It's all about frequency. 375 at-bats every single year. They estimated that he swung his bat 75,000 times every single year, just in practices. So for Babe Ruth, it was all about, practice. And so it was with Hank Aaron when he passed Babe Ruth with his 715th home run. It's all about frequency. All right, well, why is frequency so important? On slide 13, I would ask you, how are you doing on releases? How frequent are your releases? Maybe it's quarterly. Maybe it's monthly. Hey, maybe it's every 2 weeks, right? We're agile, so we have 2-week sprints, and at the end of every 2 weeks, we actually launch new products. Let's say that's your case. Well, we've arrived. If we're delivering every 2 weeks, we're agile, right? Well, I would submit that what if we were able to deliver every single day? What if we were launching constantly? That would take an amazing amount of speed, an amazing amount of agility and frequency. But why do I even, to go even further on slide 14, I make the case where speed is key because companies that innovate often win. Did you know that after 1 year, so way back when Amazon moved Amazon.com over to AWS, they were deploying code every 11 seconds, at the same time reducing the number of outages that they were having. So the result, increased revenue. That's the fact. So you know, the point is companies that innovate often win. So the next question that I typically get is when. When should we use low code? So, okay, I'm starting to get it. I'm starting to understand, but should we use it every time? Should we use it everywhere? When should we use low code? When is it a good fit? Well, I like to say on slide 16, I found that low code and specifically OutSystems is my Swiss Army knife. You know, the fact of the matter is I could use it just about anywhere. It seems like it will adapt to just about anything that I throw at it. But at the same time, while we can use it in just about anything, does it really make sense? So what we did is, on slide 17, is we created a set of guiding principles. And in our case, we use Sitecore a lot for our content management. So this is one illustration of how we found that taking Sitecore as our core content management system and OutSystems and pairing them together and integrating them is really a perfect pairing. So, you know, we mapped this out to say, hey, let's help the teams better understand, well, when would you use OutSystems? Well, we're saying, well, use it for things like native mobile apps. Use it for things where you've got web apps that are highly, highly, highly interactive and, you know, need to be, you know, pixel perfect, and you need to have great control over it. That's, you know, a great case in point. So maybe you got conversational interfaces like Alexa skills and Google Assistant and Siri, et cetera, chatbots, SMS and text and push conversations. So as an outline, if you're doing things on the left-hand side, that's a good case for OutSystems. If you have things on the right that are more like, hey, very heavy content websites, where you need real-time content authoring and the ability to publish, or maybe campaign management and segmentation, you might want to use Sitecore. And we're actually using their personalization and A/B testing capabilities, and then integrating it with OutSystems. So the point is you're making the best use of both platforms together. Okay, so on slide 18, you know, we asked the question, okay, so low code, should we use low code literally everywhere? This is another guiding principle that we found to be very useful is, you know, there's a whole suite, as you see, of opportunities, as I mentioned in the last slide, for low code. But what we'd like to do is really connect to those commodity services, things like content management that I mentioned a second ago, you know, security. You know, while, you know, low-code OutSystems does come with built-in authentication methods and user-based management and roles, often, as is the case in our company, we have an enterprise-wide identity and access management capability that we need to plug into. So that's what we're doing. You know, artificial intelligence services that are more commoditized, search engines, CRM, et cetera. So that's what we found as a general rule of thumb. And then on slide 19, it's really just a few kind of additional guiding principles is saying, you know, hey, as we mentioned, commodity services, you know, we have an API first strategy where we like to use platforms and APIs rather than kind of developing everything from scratch. If it's, as I mentioned again, is a heavy content in the authoring, use the CMS where it's best for. And then if it's heavy functionality, lastly, really prefer using low code. So again, just some guiding principles to help the teams come together and know when to use low code and really when it's best. All right, so you're probably curious to say, so okay, so what? What did it mean at Humana? What are the results that we've seen so far? So on slide 21, I use this illustration. I say it's from funnel to pipeline, and really this is the concept that we've really experienced. This is the outcome, and you know, Bart alluded to backlogs. So you know, too often on the left, you feel like you're working in a funnel where you've got ideas and needs and desires and wants from the business, the customer, and maybe you've got 100 ideas, but maybe 10 make it out into production. Wouldn't it be great if it was really more of a pipeline, where those ideas and those needs are created and they're pumped out of the pipe, they're produced and created and launched almost as fast as you can create those ideas, and that is what we've experienced. You know, we will have cases where invariably we're saying, okay, you know, business folks, designers, content developers, we need to turn up the fuel here because we need to fuel the developers. The developers are waiting for more work, where we will drain the backlog from moment to moment, from week to week. And we're constantly, whereas before it was the exact opposite, where we had, a huge backlog and a tremendous amount of designs that may never make it to market. So it's incredibly liberating, I would say, at the least. A few specific success stories. So success number one, I wanted to take us back to our very first launch, which was last July, Agent First Look. So just some of the highlights for this particular case, and you'll need to click through the build on this slide. But the first success really was this Agent First Look. When we first estimated this project, we suspected it was going to take about 8 months to build. And when we were done, it took us about 8 weeks from design to go live, and it cost us about 1/4 of the original cost. So 8 weeks instead of 8 months, and about 1/4 of the cost. We launched flawlessly to over 40,000 sales agents nationwide, and that includes about 2,000 of the Humana sales agents that are selling healthcare plans, Medicare plans. And the other 38,000 or so are independent. So it's not just about our internal audiences, but these are independent, external, third parties that also sell our Medicare plans. And if you think, well, hey, will it scale? Well, it was pretty amazing. We were able to scale it in the test environment up to 40,000 concurrent sessions, because we literally had a scenario where every single agent was on the site at the same moment when we launched it. It was a part of a big reveal. Well, we were able to scale it to 40,000 concurrent sessions, and we actually saw 20,000 at the peak. So with a relatively limited amount of hardware, that was the other thing that's pretty shocking, was it didn't require a massive cloud to accommodate 20,000 concurrent sessions, but we did. So the next, and then the last thing is that, and now that we've got it live, we're able to actually launch every single day. So 8 weeks, 8 months, 1/4 the cost, launched to 40,000 agents, 20,000 concurrent sessions, and now we're launching every day as needed. The next success story on slide 23, and again, you can build through this slide, is the Humana Foundation. So especially with COVID, I think it really brings this home. So the humanafoundation.org site is our nonprofit that where we give back to our communities that we serve. And we really wanted to go the extra mile last year and create a brand new experience for those partners, those nonprofit partners that we work with across the country, to be able to collaborate with them, directly. So the idea was, wouldn't it be great if our foundation staff members had a way to be able to, talk about the success stories that we're having in the communities we serve? Wouldn't it be great if they could also engage with people that want to apply for grants? So we offer a series of grants out to different organizations to meet the needs of their local communities. And wouldn't it be great if they could, see the status of those grants, and when they're awarded, actually integrate with us and collaborate with other nonprofits. So we basically became kind of a hub for not only our nonprofit, but for other nonprofit organizations and volunteers to work together through this new Humana Foundation website. So, as you can see the quote there from the CEO of the foundation, it's really given us a fresh start in the foundation. It's given our teams, both the digital teams and our Hive, which is our creative marketing team, a whole new way to be able to deliver value to our communities that we serve. The result, it took us half the time, half the cost, and we actually over-delivered scope, which I don't know about you, but the last time I heard that prior to working with low code was never. So half the time, half the cost, and we over-delivered scope. We had a back office set of capabilities that we wanted to create as a second phase. We were able to pull that in and deliver it in the first phase together. And all that we built in 8 weeks, on time, on budget. And once again, we're now delivering new ongoing value and improvements every day as we need. So the third and final success story I thought I would share is the annual comprehensive visit, and this should be slide 24. So the annual comprehensive visit is within Medicare. It's an annual physical, but within Medicare, it's a special type of annual physical that members as well as providers are required to go through. There's certain protocol that the providers have to go through, the healthcare providers, doctors, nurses, and that protocol changes often with the Center of Medicare and Medicaid. So we thought, wouldn't it be interesting if we could build a site that collected all of this content together and kept it fresh and current, so that it was a guidebook that they could have on their tablets, on their phone, on their desktop, and be apprised of the latest protocols for these annual comprehensive physicals, if you will. Well, this was another one where it was really, really fascinating. Their key results, 12 weeks at virtually zero cost. So we built this in 12 weeks. And what we found was that some of the designers and some of the developers in the prior two projects were involved in the design work. And the designer actually said, you know what, this is the third project that I started on. I think I can go into OutSystems and start doing a lot of this myself. And so they did. And within really a short period of time, they had the basic framework of the entire new site and the web app created. They had about 80% done by using really design resources in their free time. We reused a whole suite of brand templates and components that we had built up from the last two projects, which accelerated it tremendously, and really let the developers, but also the business folks and the designers, to become more citizen developers. So this one was kind of a really happy accident, but it was pretty shocking to see that, after a couple of projects, the designers leaned in and were able to create so much of it themselves. And then lastly, once again, we're able to deliver new and enhanced features every single day, and have a back office now for this as well, so that not only can the doctors reference this material, but we built a partnership with a printing facility that they can actually go in and shop for these materials, put them into a cart, check out, and then for free, we actually have those hard copies printed and delivered to their practices, so that they can give folks not only have an electronic reference, but they can give handouts and kind of takeaways for their patients. All right, so last thing I wanted to share was really just how do I get started, and a couple of ideas. So the first thing I would say is to really get things started, it should be on slide 6 around OutSystems learning opportunities, is go to outsystems.com/learn. There's a number of guided paths in there for the different types of team members that you have, whether it be designers, DevOps folks, architects, mobile developers, web developers, back-end developers, etc. So go out there and start looking at those paths. The online free training is fantastic. And I've even actually used this as some of a interviewing technique for designers and developers, and say, hey, before I hire you, you passed the first interview. For your second interview, go off, take this couple of training courses, come back and show me the app that you built, and let's talk through how that experience was. And so, but the training is fantastic, and it's all free. They also offer, in-class and additional training as well that we've taken advantage of. That's really helped us, kind of take it up to the next level. But this is a fantastic way to get started. The next slide, The Apprentice. So it's kind of a funny story, but you may remember that it wasn't always Schwarzenegger as the apprentice, host. There was a certain other individual, but I swapped out the image because we didn't want to be quite so controversial, believe it or not. With our PR department asked me to swap out the image. So I thought that was kind of funny. So anyhow, I think this is really a key concept, and one that we've definitely leaned into, is know when to be the apprentice. And I illustrate here is that, in the beginning, leverage the experts, leverage folks like Cloud Development Resources that, have a proven, digital factory that they can stand up very, very quickly. They've been doing this over and over and over again, and they know all the best practices. Lean on them. Let them be the kind of 90%. Let your team be the 10%. Be the apprentice in the beginning. Bring your team alongside of the experts in the beginning. And then as time goes on, that scale will tip. then you'll be kind of the apprentice 2 or 3, and then maybe now, you've got team leads that are leading projects of your own, and eventually, the scale will tip. I know in Humana we've got no shortage of contract and vendor relationships, but at the same time we want to have you want to get to that right balance of our own staff delivering the skills and the expertise in addition to the experts. So definitely lean on the experts in the beginning, and then watch that scale tip to where you all are able to do more. But I would not go it alone in the very beginning, because it's new, it's different, and while you're able to build things very, very quickly and innovate quickly, it's also the case that you could innovate quickly, but also build things that may not scale and stand the test of time if they're not following things like the best practice of the 4-layer canvas that OutSystems has laid out. So the last slide here before we kind of hand it back is slide 28. So I just put some pictures up here, and I would ask you to just pause for a minute and think about the communities that you serve, the users that are your users, the customers that are your customers. Who are they? Are they, in our case, they're the elderly. In our case, they're families that are trying to, provide the best healthcare they can. It's, sports teams and athletics and colleges and universities and, pets, veterinarians, doctors. Is it the environment? Is it, service members across the world? Who is it in your world that needs a superhero? Who is it in your world that needs you to innovate faster than you've ever been able to before, to deliver value and change the lives of people around you that you serve at a pace that you've never seen before? So as you think about those folks, rest on that. And then I would submit, who's the superhero now? With that ability to innovate, with those folks in mind, it's you. It's you, it's me, it's all of us. And as Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility. So with that, I'll thank you very much for the time, and hope you found this interesting, and I'll turn it back over to our hosts. Thank you.
Bruce, thank you so much. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Bruce, thanks so much. I appreciate it. I know it's ridiculously difficult to do these kinds of presentations in the most normal of circumstances, but talking blind while somebody is actually driving it from afar is even more challenging. You did a yeoman's work there, so thank you. Appreciate it. Before we move on, the next step here is going to be Matt Hartley, who is our head of delivery and a very experienced OutSystems technician, is going to actually show you how this platform works and how you can build a mobile app in very, very short period of time. He's going to build one in about 15 minutes. I want to just point out two things before we move on, though, to sort of underline some of the things that Bruce said. The first is that all of what he's talking about in terms of the projects that they have undertaken, all of them started with a business case and the need to understand what's the business value of taking a low-code approach versus a traditional approach. And that is something that the OutSystems guys, that we at CDR also do, is work with you to help build those business values, do an assessment. What are you going to save in the short term? What are you going to save in the long term? And including all of the economic side of things, but also the softer side of things in terms of the desired outcome for whoever your parties are. So keep that in mind, and if you're interested in how we do something like that, by all means, let us know. The second thing is that related to Bruce's point about the training, at the end of this presentation, there's going to be a last slide for wrap up and next steps. And there's a link on that slide. It's the OutSystems logo. If you click on that link, you will get directly to the personal edition download on the OutSystems website. And what OutSystems has done, which is quite smart, I think, is actually provide a fully functioning, free version of the platform for people to get started, to play around with it, to see how it works, etc. That's generally the sort of key in the lock, if you will, for how most people interact with OutSystems. So I'll remind you at the end, but just know that there is a free version out there that you which is today's version that you're going to see with Matt, but that you can access with no problem. So without further ado, Matt, I turn it over to you.
Okay.
Off you go.
Awesome. So want to make sure you guys can hear me.
Yes, sir, we can.
All right, and I'm going to share my screen here momentarily. But first of all, thank you, Clark, for the introduction. My name's Matt Hartley. I'm the head of delivery at Cloud Development. And Bruce, awesome presentation. Always love watching that. So thank you for that. And thank you for being such a great partner with us and with OutSystems. So great job. Let me know if you guys can see my screen. I'm going to go off video too so that my so I don't get distracted and you guys don't get distracted. We'll focus on the build out. But you should be able to see my screen. Let me know if everyone can.
Yes, sir. You're all set.
All right, awesome. Let me jump in. So a little context before I jump in and build an application. Want to give you all an understanding of kind of what's in the box a little bit. So the OutSystems platform is a full stack, full lifecycle development platform based on .NET standards code. Even the generation of the code is all standards.NET based. In the actual platform, there are 4 main tools. One is called Service Studio. That's the development environment. You're going to see that today when I build an application. Another one is Integration Studio. So if I want to pull in external code or bring in external database systems, I can use Integration Studio to bring that into the platform. Service Center is the administration console. And that's where you would go to manage your applications, also to look at logging and other administrative tasks. You would do that in Service Center. And then finally, in Lifetime. Lifetime is the built-in continuous integration, continuous deployment tool. So when you want to move your application from development to test to production, you would use Lifetime. So we're not going to go through all of these tools today, all part of the platform, all part of the single licensing you get with OutSystems. But today what we're going to focus on is Service Studio, which is the development environment. This is where most of your developers are going to spend their time is in Service Studio. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lower the presentation. I'm going to bring up Service Studio and take you all through it. And I'll get this out of my way here. There we go. Okay. So Service Studio, one of the main development tool, IDE, visual development tool for OutSystems. And today I'm going to build a reactive web application basically for credit card expenses. So if your employees are managing, if you're managing your credit card expenses for employees, that's the application that I'm going to build today, and kind of take you through the process of doing that and show you how quickly it can be done on OutSystems. I'll upload an app icon, application icon. You can choose really anything. What's nice, it actually chooses the color, the primary color of that app icon when I create the app. When I create my first application on OutSystems, you'll notice that you can create what's called a module. This is called modular programming. It is a very key aspect to architecting on OutSystems. You can create modules that essentially are a separation of concern. They improve governance and maintenance. You can create many modules, encapsulate them in an application. And again, it's called modular program. Today, I'm going to create one module, which is going to be our UI module or our reactive web application. It'll open up Service Studio and allow me to start building out my applications. Before I get into building out the credit card expense application, I'll give you a quick walkthrough so you can kind of see the user interface for the IDE. So in the middle is our canvas. This is where we do all of our pixel perfect UI as well as our logic. Off to the left is our palette. So very common IDE if you've ever used Eclipse or anything else, Visual Studio, for example. All the different widgets that you can select in patterns out of the box are on the left. On the right is our directory structure. So all of our screens and so forth are here. Also our properties window. So any of the widgets we select, you can configure the properties of that particular widget and the style as well. And then down below is our output window. So whenever we're building our logic, building our screens, if there's an error, you'll see that in the true change output window, as well as a visual debugger. So very, very common IDE layout. However, there is one major difference. And usually I always ask the crowd, you know, what's the major difference? Can you see it? But in virtual world, Can't ask that question right now, but what I will do is I'll take you through the major difference. And it's up here to the left, actually to the right, excuse me. So we have 4 tabs up here: processes, interface, logic, and data. This is a full stack development platform. You can build your entire application from front end to back end right within this single tool called Service Studio. It's just the fact that everything is built right within this tool is a huge time saver. And we haven't even gotten into the visual aspects of creating your logic visually and building out an application, which you'll see. But this is just one piece of it. So if I want to build business processes, I can build that on the platform. All of my pixel perfect interfaces, I can build that on the platform. All of my visual logic, just like you would build in traditional code, but you're doing it visually. And then all of my backend data, which we call entities and OutSystems, you can build on the platform. So to start the application, you can see that I have a login screen, which is nice. When you create your application, it does bring in some common objects and screens. This is one of them. I'll bet we probably could argue that this is not the best login screen you've ever seen. We're going to style it, make it a little prettier, and you'll see how you can do that with OutSystems. The first thing I want to do is I want to create my data model. And to do that, I'm going to, for my credit card expenses, I'm actually going to import an Excel spreadsheet of those credit card expenses. And by doing this, the platform will introspect the spreadsheet and it will actually create the entities for me. It will pull in all the data that's in that spreadsheet and it'll create the entities, essentially the tables. And you'll notice that I have 2 entities now: my cards, my credit cards for each employee, and all of the expenses. And what's nice is if I drill down on one of these entities, this is where you start seeing the speed of the platform, how it's helping you quickly get going, right? So here I have my entities. It's created all the attributes that's storing all the data, but down below are all of the CRUD operations. So your create, your update, your delete, already created for you. And then you can wrap these in CRUD wrappers and put more logic on top of it for your business logic. But the fact that this is already created for you is a huge time saver. You don't have to create it out of the box. So it's ready, it's right there for you. So now that I have my 2 entities, I'm going to build out my interface and I want to create my first couple screens. And in OutSystems, there's a lot of great sort of quick functions, if you will, called scaffolding that you can leverage. And with scaffolding, I can actually create a screen just by dragging it over onto my palette, or excuse me, my design area, and it will automatically, the platform will automatically create the screens. It'll create a list screen of cards, and it will create a detail screen. And by doing this, it saves a significant amount of time, first of all, but this feature is called scaffolding in OutSystems. There's a lot of different scaffolding techniques that you can use in the platform. This is just one of them, taking an entity and dragging it over. But now under my interface tab, you'll be able to see now my list of cards. So we're building a React web page. So a performant React-based web page on OutSystems. Now I have my first screen. You can see it here. Here's my card list. I have already pagination is there. Again, we can pretty this up. We can make it look better, and I'm going to show you how to do that. But the basis of my screen is here, including adding a card. On my detail screen, so my detail screen was created. I'll bet not the best screen in the world, but we're going to pretty it up, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So for example, here's my credit card details. When I click on one of my employees' credit cards, it would open up this screen. Here's my detail screen. One of the things I'd like to do is show an image of the credit card. So if it's a Visa or a MasterCard. And I can drag over from the palette some different widgets. This is called an if widget. It's actually for UI. So if this happens, show this image. If not, show this, for example. And so that's exactly what I'm going to do. If the card is a Visa, I'm going to want to show a Visa image. And if it's a MasterCard, I'm going to want to show a MasterCard image. I can style these. I might want to center them a little bit, and you can see how I'm using the style editor here to center the images. On this image, if it's a Visa, credit card will show a Visa, so I'll import an image, and we'll use our Visa image here. And all I'm doing is just prettying up the page, providing a little context to the end user who's using the application, so that if it's a Visa card, we can see a Visa image, and if it's a MasterCard, we can see a MasterCard image. Now we would just build a little bit of the logic around this condition on the page. And so what we'll do is we'll open up the expression editor. The expression editor is just where you'd write snippets of code, if you will, to put in a little bit of logic. So in this case, what I'm going to do is, and those of you who are hardcore programmers out there, you probably know what I'm doing when I write to lower, but it already knows the scope. So the expression editor knows the scope of the screen, and it knows that the screen is associated to my, my card entity. And I can actually drill down on it and get the specific card that's in my list at that time in the detail screen. And I can pull in the card type. And if the card type equals Visa, then show the Visa image. And so it just gives you an idea of kind of the level of logic you can build right in just to your screen, right? And as I'm building it out. The other thing I'd like to do, yep.
Matt, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we've had a question that, can you make your screen bigger so people can see it?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Let me know if that helps.
Can you go one more?
I can't. That's about as.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
That's about as big as it goes. Sorry about that if it's hard to see, folks. But yeah, I'm at the maximum res on my screen here. So now that I've kind of put in a little context around the images, the Visa and the MasterCard, the next thing I want to do is add my expenses. So when I come to the card detail, I can see all the expenses associated to that. I'm going to use scaffolding again, another type of scaffolding. I'm going to grab the expense entity and I'm going to drag it onto my screen, and I'm going to put it right below here. And so now I'm going to tie my credit card to the details of the expenses, and I'll show you how to do that. First, I want to style it a little bit. Let's make our margin, let's say 30 from the top, so it's not butted right up there. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm using the built-in style editor to kind of style it up. I don't want to show the image URL, so I'm going to delete this column. I'm going to add a nice image for the company here. So I'm just pulling an image over. We'll make it a little bit smaller. Let's go like that. And then the image will come from one of our entities. So I could just drill down. Let's make this a external URL. And you'll see that this brings in Amazon. We'll make it a little smaller. It's a little too big. You'll also notice that the row here is pretty long. I can style this as well so that the width of it is not 900 pixels. Let's make it 300. And let's make it 400. Here we go. And then I can even update that. So you can just see what I'm doing here as I'm going through this process, kind of editing and making it the way I want it to look. So now that we have this done, the last thing I want to do is I want to tie the credit card that's in the detail screen to the expenses. And to do that, I want to pull up what's called an aggregate. An aggregate in OutSystems is essentially a query, an optimized query. And so what I'm doing is I'm pulling up a view of that here. And in the optimized query, all I want to do is put in a filter. So I want to put a nice filter in that says, okay, for this credit card screen, for this expense, just show me the expenses for the credit card that we're looking at. So we're looking at, let's see, card detail. Card number. So simple filter, what we put in, so when we come to the detail screen, we're only seeing the expenses for that credit card. And so now that we've built our detail screen, we'll come back, we'll take a quick look at it. You guys can see it. So we've built our detail screen. We have our list screen. I'm happy with how it looks. We've kind of put in our logic. We've optimized, we've used one of our optimized queries. We've did a filter on the expenses. The next thing I'd like to do is start styling it. And you can see here, when I pull up the login screen, we'll start there. So we talked about the login screen, I'll bet not the prettiest, but let's start prettying it up a little bit, right? So there is our theme editor that we can leverage right within OutSystems to start making this particular screen look pretty. So for example, instead of having this very bold blue, let's use an image in the background. And I might want to increase my fonts, for example. So you don't have to be an expert in UI UX to build an awesome UI in OutSystems. There are lots of tools built right into Service Studio to help people build great UIs. So you could see I just upped the font here, and a few other things that I could go through and do. Like, so let me pull up the detail screen and let's start putting some style around that. So here's the detail screen. Now, what would be nice is if the background was a dark background. And let's say the header, I don't like that white header. Let's make it a dark header. If we scroll down, and we've kind of done everything using the theme editor, we've kind of maximized what we're going to do here, but it's kind of hard to see this image right here. So I probably need to write some CSS to do that. And you can absolutely get to that level. So if the theme editor doesn't get you where you want to go, you can write the CSS by hand, and you can pull that up by pulling up the CSS theme. And so out of the sake of just time, I've already created some CSS here. But what I'm going to do is just pop that in here, and you can create your own themes, which we highly recommend for your brand, for your applications. You can create themes and use them over and over again in your application as a reusable type of component. You'll notice I just dropped that into here. I've created my credit card expense theme, and now we can see that it's got a nice white background on the image here and so forth. The last thing I want to do is kind of take you guys through here. We've styled a little bit, is the transition between the list screen and the detail screen. So we can set up a transition. So for example, on the cards list, so now that we've kind of styled this up a bit, you can see here, sorry, I got these pop-ups. So on the link here, this is a reactive web page. It is a single page architecture, if you're familiar with that. It's client-side execution of the UI. And because of that, we can start adding even really robust animations to our transitions. So for example, when I click on the link on the list page to go to the detail page, I can put in a transition that slides in the details from the right. And then I can go back to the detail screen and I can slide it out when I hit the back button. And this is just one of the great features of building a reactive web application on OutSystems. And we'll slide from the left. And so now that I've built my application, I have my credit card list, I have my credit card detail, we put some nice graphics on the detail screen, we've styled it up. The last thing I want to do is publish. And you'll notice at the top, there's this big green button. That is the one-click publish within the OutSystems Service Studio tool. When you click it, it actually will generate the standards-based .NET and React code, and it lays it down right onto the IIS and .NET stack that the platform runs on. Everything is standards-based. There's no interpreter, which is very, very important to leave here. If there's probably anything that you're going to leave here today with, please leave with this. OutSystems generates standards-based code. There is no interpreter. It scales like, this will scale like any web application. And that's really an important factor when you're looking at other low-code vendors out in the space. Most of them have an interpreter. OutSystems does not, which means it can scale very high. So now I'm pulling up the credit card application. Here's our login screen. You can see it looks really nice. We built this in probably about 15 minutes. I'll log in. You'll see our screen. You'll notice that I'm using Chrome tools. Let me minimize this real quick so that you guys can focus on the screen. So you'll notice that I'm using Chrome tools. This is a React page, so you can see that. Anybody that's familiar with React and Chrome tools, you can install this extension on Chrome to see React pages. And so this is a React page built on OutSystems. Here's my list, my credit card list. If I click on this one, which is a MasterCard for Waring, you'll notice it slides in from the right, and then I can see my MasterCard image. Here's all the expenses down below. I hit back, you'll see it slide out. And what's even cool is out of the box, it's responsive. And so you don't have to put a lot of effort and time into building a performant React-based application on OutSystems that will run on desktop, tablet, and mobile right out of the box. You can do this just like I did in 15 minutes. And that's the power of OutSystems. Let me stop there, and I think at that point, probably just give it right back to you, Clark.
Awesome, Matt. And to be clear, unfortunately, it was 20 minutes, but we'll give you a break.
Right.
Thank you for that, man. I really appreciate it.
Yep.
So this is the point in the session where we're going to move to taking questions. And thank you, Regina. You've got a question there. We'll answer that here in a second. If y'all, there's a question, a place down at the bottom where you can actually enter in questions if you'd like. I have a few prepared ones for our panel. Let me reintroduce Bruce Buttles, who we all know from speaking earlier about his work with Humana and the implementation of low code. New to this conversation, Christian Woodward, who's the VP of Americas for OutSystems. Say hello, Christian. Oh, you're on mute, mate.
I'll try that again. Hey, everybody. Thanks for having us, Clark.
My pleasure.
Great job, Bruce, as always.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
And Justin James, who is the head of architecture for my organization and probably the most experienced OutSystems developer in the United States. Say hello, Justin.
Hey, everyone.
So, guys, thanks for joining. Really appreciate it. And we've had one question come in from Regina McCoy about accessibility and how does OutSystems as a platform deal with accessibility requirements. And I presume, Regina, that is inclusive or specifically around and I forget the number. It's like 50 something requirements that the federal government has around accessibility for visually impaired folks, etc. Can somebody answer? Justin, Bruce?
Yeah. Hey, this is Bruce. This is Bruce. I'd be happy to share our experience if you'd like.
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, great question, because this is something that I think is too often overlooked. But it probably is no surprise, being that Humana is largely focused on retirees, that accessibility is absolutely paramount. Not to mention that the CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid, also has pretty stringent requirements. But Humana as a brand has really invested heavily in accessibility and kind of pride ourselves on doing as much as we can to make things easy for everyone and really inclusive. So I think we look at it as going beyond. So the short answer is this, is that the framework really gives us the ability to solve it excellently. So we adhere to all ally requirements, and then additional requirements of our own that go above and beyond the basic standards. Just as an illustration, the first application that we launched, which was, if you recall, First Look, the agent First Look, got the highest accessibility score of any application that we actually have in production the day it launched. So literally the day it launched, it got the #1 highest accessibility score that we give all of our applications right out of the box. And, meanwhile, you've got traditional apps that have been out there for ages that we've been constantly improving. But what it really was about was, you saw it a little bit with the CSS and the templates, is that the base templates got us a long way there, and then gave us the opportunity to go and very quickly add the additional attributes and tags to really take it to that next level of accessibility and make it, even in some cases, the UI morph a little bit based on the customer's device and their settings. So we found it to be incredibly valuable. Again, we were first app out of the door, got the highest accessibility score out of any application we have in our enterprise.
That's awesome. Thanks, Bruce. And one other thing I would note on the accessibility issue is actually my sister or brother organization in Australia is actually working on a project right now that is building out a mobile app for the National Disability Insurance Agency. And it's going to address something called WCAG AAA, which I have no idea what that stands for, but I'm told that it is a very comprehensive accessibility requirement document. So if you want more information on that, we can certainly provide it. The next question, actually, I'm going to direct to Christian. So we've had Rebecca Dial has asked about, are there any government entities that have started using low code? And I will add either here or elsewhere, here in North America or elsewhere in the world.
The short answer is yes, all over the place. And I can speak to our customers throughout the Americas. And the use of OutSystems is pervasive across state, local government, higher education, and pockets within the federal government where we have interest growing rapidly.
And I would direct you, Rebecca, on the OutSystems website, which you'll be able to get to. It's www.outsystems.com. Under their user stories, there is an awesome case study from the city of Oakland that has been using OutSystems for what, Christian, 3 years now, 3 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And doing some really innovative things, not only for the internal workings of the city of Oakland, but also for communicating with their citizens. So take a look at that. That's not something Cloud Development was involved in, but I just happen to know the example. So,
yep. And just to dovetail off that, Clark, for those interested, we also have state contracts in all 50 states around the country. OutSystems does have a GSA schedule. We are working, like I said earlier, we are working with both civilian and DoD agencies. And I'd really say that within the state and local sector, just over the last couple of weeks, the interest that we've seen has really picked up because everything that everybody's experiencing as a result of COVID has exposed gaps within some systems that haven't been updated for 10, 15, 20 years within certain cities, states, and municipalities. And OutSystems has can serve a big gap in that market and offer a layer on top of those old archaic legacy systems that can make them more extensible and modernize them in very short order with limited investment.
Great, and that leads to another question that I'd like to direct towards Justin. Building on what Christian was just saying around building a wrapper, I know you've had a number of experiences with clients where they've got these legacy systems that, possibly green screen systems or, some that are a bit more youthful than that. But folks looking to get a more modern front end on their system without having to rebuild from scratch. Could you talk about an example or two there?
Sure. I've worked with quite a number of these systems. We've worked with a number of these systems where, somebody has anything, maybe as legacy as an AS400 style system or, an older system where there's only, say, a .NET DLL to access it, things like that. And what we do is we wrap that up and we present it to the OutSystems platform in a fashion where it looks and feels like native OutSystems code, and that allows the developers to work very easily with it. So our pattern will be an architect or a senior developer will do that wrapping and then present it to the rest of the team so that this way they don't have to know what's going on under the hood. And one of the advantages of that is that it lets us do that work. It lets us leverage their tested existing system, data models and code and things like that. So you don't have to, reinvent those wheels up front. But as the customer gets more comfortable and as they're prepared to take on the bigger transformation project and get off of that legacy system, then we can start replacing the contents of that wrapper with more OutSystems code. so that we're now transitioning them completely off of that legacy system if that's their end goal.
Thanks, Justin. And I'm sorry, Bruce. Oh, thanks, Justin. Hey, Bruce, I wanted to ask you, because you've actually had to face this issue. I mean, you talked about your API first approach, which is essentially another way of stating, using OutSystems as sort of a modern front end to some of your systems of record. Do you want to comment on that, and specifically on, does there become a point of contention between the folks who own the systems of record and the digital folks around, who owns this, and are you trying to replace everything that we've done for the last 50 years, et cetera?
Yeah, it's definitely, I think it's, first of all, I got to say, remember the slide I had up there that had all the faces of the people. Remember those faces of the people that you serve, your customers, your members, et cetera, your users, because those are the people you want to have in mind when you do hit that kind of, cultural, friction. We as innovators, this is our life. We are trying to change things, and we did see that. The good news is that from a technical perspective, I mean, OutSystems helped us amazingly be able to connect to just about anything. The ability to point and click, connect to RESTful APIs, even older SOAP web services, is incredibly easy. I think we were just doing a proof of concept where we're evaluating, 2 different vendor backend platforms. We were able to build a mobile app very quickly that connected to both of them, both competing vendors, and toggle back and forth between the two. So, I mean, that's the type of agility and insight that we're giving all of us as innovators, technologists, business folks we never had before. So that helps to kind of bring the temperature down a bit to say, okay, well, you're right. It's pretty hard to argue with that level of flexibility. But, ultimately, it's about people. It's about our culture and helping people kind of see what's possible and not feel so threatened, if you will. But you may get that, but that's when I think you got to just be persistent. You have to be persistent and keep those folks that you're serving in mind and continue to press forward and help folks resolve those. The last thing I'll say is I just keep saying, hey, skeptics are welcome in my world. I welcome those skeptics, and I say, hey, well, what is it about OutSystems or low code that you're concerned about? And let's put those on paper. Let's talk about them, because, maybe they have some insights that can make it yet even better than even I thought it could be.
Dynamite. Thanks, Bruce. And this is a bit of a follow-on, I think, to Justin to answer. I won't try and answer this because I'll probably get it wrong. But it's a follow-on to what Bruce was just talking. VS Hurd has asked, I may have missed this, but importing data and refreshing frequencies, how is it managed, and does it involve direct queries? So Bruce just talked about that. Could you actually give a more succinct, sorry, Bruce, I not directed at you, directed at me, a more succinct technical answer to that question?
Sure. In OutSystems, you can do anything. You can do a direct database connection to an external data source. You can use that. You don't actually write the queries. You can still use aggregates like Matt showed you in his demonstration. And in your OutSystems application, it's treated just like it is internally with an internal data source. So it's very smooth. It's very fluid once you've exposed that external data table. Or again, you can use as Bruce mentioned, SOAP services, REST services, you can wrap those up. You can take, a DLL in terms of, whatever you want to do, you can get to that data and expose it to your OutSystems application. Typically, we don't import it typically. We'll leave it in the system of record for the time being. But there are times where it makes sense to do imports of data and perhaps transform it to a different data model along the way. So you can really do whatever meets the needs of your application. The technical capabilities are there.
Great, thank you. And so the last question we've got this morning, and I'm not sure who answers this, it could be any one of the three of you, so I'll throw it out there. But U796781 has asked, Can you talk more about the differences between business citizen developers and IT developers? Does OutSystems provide the ability to keep these roles separated? I would like to understand, is there a separation of duties controlled by the product? How does IT enable the business for the citizen developers?
So out of the box, you have developer roles which you can use, and you can use those developer roles to control who has access to what modules. So if it makes sense to you, what you can do is you can have business developers having access to edit certain modules where you have your complicated business logic, security authentication, things like that. And then they can expose those to the citizen developers to make use of and keep them separated. You can definitely do that. I think that in a well-architected application, those dividing lines are kind of built into the architecture. We say, okay, citizen developers, you've got access to the data model to use it in your modules. You've got access to this functionality that's been built, but this other team's going to be building that underlying functionality, the underlying data model to make sure it's built with best practices. So you can definitely do that. Is it set up out of the box for that? No. OutSystems has done some previews of upcoming things that they're calling experience builders, where they're making it extremely easy for citizen developers to take these experience builders and get the bones and skeleton of an application built very quickly by answering questions within a few minutes, and it'll be built to best practices. And that's going to be another tool to allow the citizen developers to quickly and easily get online, and then hand part of that off to the business developers while they continue working on their pieces of it.
Thanks, Justin. And just to be clear, there are a number of clients that we have, and certainly that OutSystems has, where that specific issue of citizen developers and managing the line between them and the IT organization is an ongoing thing. This is the world that we're all entering, and I think some of the enhancements that are planned on the platform over the next year that Justin was referring to are going to make that life even easier as we move forward. Christian, am I missing something here, or you want to add anything?
No, I think it's well said, Clark.
Great. And Bruce, you got anything to add? Otherwise, we're going to start to wrap this thing up.
No, again, just thank you and persist. I think that's the key. Think about those folks that you serve and persist.
Awesome. Okay, so thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate the time that you spent. Very shortly, you're going to receive our final donation is to the food bank. Down here at the bottom, you're also going to receive a copy of the presentation. Down here at the bottom where the food bank logo, if you click on that, you can go and get directly to their donation page yourself. But as I said when we started this, money is not the only thing. They really need volunteers. And if you're joining from somewhere else around the country, there are food banks everywhere that are in the exact same situation. So please think about your neighbors and help out where you can. We'll also be providing a link if you on this page. If you click on the OutSystems logo here, you will get directly to the OutSystems personal edition page. You can get there directly by going to outsystems.com. And we will also provide you information on who you can contact should you have questions, because I hope this has been an insightful hour and a half. We've raised some questions in your mind. We'd love to be able to share more of our experience and OutSystems' experience with you. So reach out, let us know. And again, thank you for your time this morning. And don't forget your local food banks. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Clark, and to the OutSystems and cloud development teams, and to Bruce. Excellent content. I think it was very fascinating. I learned a lot, and I hope everybody else did. So thank you all for joining us. And as Clark said, we'll be following up shortly. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.